We are back with another AmeriCorps Connections. We're in our special series of the recruitment extravaganza for the 2024-2025 service year. And we have with us Sarah Kuntz from Communities in Schools from San Antonio. She is an AmeriCorps alum, so we will dive down her journey and how she found AmeriCorps and this special opportunity that is available for the community schools in San Antonio and a couple other areas in Texas, if you're in that area. But if this is the first time you've landed on this podcast, this is the AmeriCorps Connections Podcast. My name is Nicki. I'm the brainchild of this idea of just let's start getting as many AmeriCorps alums on this platform to talk about AmeriCorps, their experience, and to learn what they're up to now. We're into over 42, 43 episodes, so there's a great library if you want to just go back and listen to some of the experiences and how folks ended up, tromping through the woods during their NCCC, their National Community Civilian Corps service year, to becoming a designer for a public transportation designer for the state of Idaho. Shout out Jason Rose. I don't think it's the whole state. Anyways, yeah, it really came from my idea during my AmeriCorps year when I served with Volunteer Maryland. One of the superpowers I found were connections. The connections were so important, and nurturing those connections and keeping those connections and finding value. And so I just really wanted to keep that going. And so I try to speak to as many AmeriCorps alum as possible. And again, we're doing this special series of recruitment extravaganza for 24-25 service year. For folks that don't know, during this is being recorded the beginning of May. So from May till about July or August is really the height of recruitment season for most of the AmeriCorps programs. And honestly, participation has been kind of low over the last couple of years, especially since the pandemic. And I'm a lover of AmeriCorps. It changed my life. I learned so many things, and I want to try to just spread the word and get as many folks introduced to these opportunities as possible. So before we get started with Sarah, of course, I want to do a shout out to Dan Medevere from Time or Money Productions. He jumped on board right away, and he said, this is a great podcast, a great platform, and I'm going to help you get on all the podcast platforms. I don't know what an RSS feed is still, so thank you, Dan, for converting all of that and making it happen. If you are listening to this in podcast land, definitely share and like it so it comes up on your feed and up on people's feeds. If you're watching this on YouTube, please comment and like and follow, subscribe to the channel. It makes a difference in the algorithms, and hopefully more people can see it. And then I want a special shout out to Sharon Tewksbury Bloom and her all AmeriCorps alum team from Do Good, Be Good, who are supporting this podcast on the back end with some editing and marketing. A lot of the folks that are on this special extravaganza recruitment came from the efforts of Do Good, Be Good team marketing this. So thank you, Sharon, for believing in this podcast, believing in me, and making an investment with your staff, your time and your staff time. Okay, here we go. We are here today with Sarah Kuntz. Is that right, Kuntz? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
I had a Mr. Kuntz as a social studies teacher, and I knew somebody with the last name Kuntz, so very familiar. So you started your service year with City Year, and now you're with Communities in Schools, which sometimes partners with City Year. So it's kind of a cool full circle. And she's in San Antonio, and so is Christina Flores, and so is Dana Brazelli, who are out there. So I guess San Antonio nurtures and grows AmeriCorps members. Sarah, how did you find out about AmeriCorps, and how did you just jump in, and what was your service year like? Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got my undergraduate degree in sociology, which meant I had no idea what I was going to do after graduation. So I went to my career center on campus, and at the time, I went to college in Dallas, and City Year Dallas was just starting. So it was very fresh on their minds, and they're like, hey, you should do this. And then I looked at the stipend rate, and I realized that I would not be able to do that in Dallas. So I decided to go back to my hometown of San Antonio and serve in City Year San Antonio. I did 2 full years of service, one as a Corps member and one as a team leader. And it was actually my experience with City Year that got me connected with Communities in Schools. The rooms were just across the hall from each other. So whenever our students needed a uniform, needed school supplies, needed more help with their emotions than we could
Mm.
provide as city year members, we sent them over to our communities and schools site coordinator. And I realized that that was what I wanted to do.
That's so cool that right away you were in your service opportunity, which gave you a lens into this other organization that you weren't serving in. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. You enjoyed what you were doing, but then you wanted to support the students in a different way. During your city year service year, city year experience, whatever. What were some of the things that you maybe saw in the classroom that you were like, oh, like I really want to actually pour in a little bit more to that student? When were some incidences?
Yeah, there is one that is still burned into my
Mm,
mind. I was helping a student with an essay. I was placed at a high school working with freshman students in English, and so we actually pulled out of the classroom because she was pretty far behind. And so we were sitting one on one. I was tutoring her. I was helping her get through this essay, painful sentence by painful sentence, the paragraph structure, really trying to help teach her this format so that she could pass her state exams. And eventually and it had been painful, right? It was back and forth. And, I could tell she was stressed out, but I was just trying to help support her. And at the end, she finally like throws down her pencil and like puts her head on the table and was just like, I cannot do this right now. Like, I just broke up with my boyfriend. I am not
oh,
okay. I know. And of course, I felt awful that I had no idea going into that tutoring session that she'd been going through so much.
mhm,
And that was really kind of a turning moment for me. Um,
yeah.
but there's so many different examples of that too, where students come to school hungry. They come to school without the basic supplies they need. They come to school having worked a part-time job to help support their family. And, in that environment, it can be really challenging to learn when their basic needs are not met yet.
That's so important for us to remember, especially with students in schools, but also just people in general, like you just don't know what the person behind you in the grocery store is going through or what have been through. Maybe it's a blessing that they can even be at the grocery store. So I think that a lot of the AmeriCorps alums that I've spoken to that have worked in classrooms or served in classrooms really echo that they've had an experience where something's happening with the student that they're tutoring or mentoring, and then they find out like what is behind that day or whatever that students feeling or acting that certain way. So that's a really powerful story. So during your city year, was there anybody that stood out to you as far as like mentors or somebody like ahead of you that you kind of relied on? Because I can imagine, I mean, I think city year has pretty good wraparound services, but I can imagine that being in schools and working with students could be super stressful. Was there anybody that kind of supported you during your service year particularly?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so many. And that was one of the things I loved about City Year is there were those layers. So you
Mhm.
had your team around you who are amazing, strong relationships, right? Getting to work together through challenging situations. Then you had a team leader who was still an AmeriCorps member, so they got
Mm,
what you were going through, right? Shout out Sergio, who would bridge you then to your impact manager, who is the one who's like responsible for
mm.
performance evaluations and helping you grow as a young professional. I needed that help growing as a young professional. I was late to our very first day. I was not in uniform, right? And they took me aside and helped coach me and really helped me work through those things. So I credit City Year for giving me a really good like starting point in my career.
Mhm. Yeah, I love the AmeriCorps programs that are structured with a leader. A lot of programs are, but some aren't. I just think there's that extra layer of confidentiality and care that happens, especially if it's somebody who's gone through a service year and they're able to like be like, yeah, I know, this is really hard, but you can do it. So I love that. And you're echoing exactly kind of what I said when in the introduction about it changed the trajectory of my life. But I did my service year when I was 30 something years old. I can't remember how old I was, but honestly it was the best professional development training that I ever had in my entire life. So it offers you kind of like this this space to grow and like learn who you are and learn how you work and learn where your skills are and what you're lacking. And so it sounds like you had a similar experience. We're kind of doing like a dual recruitment here. So I don't know, like City Year, maybe you want to sponsor this podcast at some point, but sounds like City Year has an awesome program as well, especially all the folks that I've talked to. So did you go, so you looked across the hall and you were like, communities in schools is a cool place and I want to do that next. Was that right after your service year or what was the transition like?
Yeah, it was. And it was actually the connections that I made during my service year that helped me to get the job. So, as a team leader, I would be on some of our school committees, like our attendance committee, and I'd help plan school-wide events since I was not in that role directly in the classrooms with the students. And I, was recognized by our principal for that, and she agreed to write me a reference letter.
Love
And
that.
I also got a reference letter from that communities and school staff across the hall who I collaborated with. So I was able to come in with a really strong application. And surprisingly, I actually also had a pretty good knowledge of case management and the steps that
Mm,
were needed because City Year is very data based and in their
mhm.
practices. So as a team leader, I got to really help be part of the selection of the students who would receive tutoring and support from City Year,
Ah,
who would receive attendance support and behavior support. And so I was able to apply that knowledge in my interview. And that's what helped me get selected as a site coordinator
that's
with
so cool
communities
that,
and schools.
yeah. And I think that you're bringing up a good point. I know this is about recruitment, but for folks that are maybe an AmeriCorps member, you're serving right now, it's so important to look outside your organization. I'm sure that well, maybe there's an AmeriCorps member that's working in a silo, but I can't imagine that like reach out to me if you are. But look across the aisle, look across the hallway and see who your organization is partnering with and make allies. You know, I really made allies during my service year with Anne Arundel County Department of Recreation and Parks. And so after my service year, I was able to be like, hey, like would anybody be interested in hiring me? And my allies, like you said, were able to like walk in the room with me and say, we've been working with her for a year. I think she'd be a really great asset to the department. Like you don't even really have to like you're basically doing a year-long interview. So really, really like double down on those connections, right? And the network and expansion. Do you have anything to add to that?
I just completely agree. Yeah.
It's so true. I think it's so fun during a service year because you're not going to stay there forever. So you have an opportunity to openly be like, hey, I'm going to be finished in July of 2025. So, let me try some stuff out of your organization. And, I'm supervising a Vista member right now. And like, even when he first started, I was like, oh, look for jobs here, look for jobs here. I'm like, let's get you. And he was able to find something before his service year ended. And they're so great because he really wants to finish his service year, but he really wanted this job. So they were like, okay, we'll just start you part time. And then once you're finished with your service year. So those are ways to negotiate as well. Sorry, that was like a massive tangent, but that's like where my passion is. Like if you're an AmeriCorps member and you're listening to this, like reach out to me and we'll chat strategies. Okay, so communities and schools, you're with them now. And did you start off supporting the AmeriCorps program right away, or was that something that you moved into?
No, so this is a really cool story too. So when I joined Communities and Schools of San Antonio, they did not have an AmeriCorps grant yet.
Love
So
that.
I was in the site coordinator role, which is direct service in the schools. And so I did that for about 2.5 years. And then in fall of 2019, we received an AmeriCorps grant, and they realized very quickly they would need a full-time staff to staff it. And so they opened up the role. I was encouraged by my manager and another mentor at Communities and Schools to apply, and I received it. And so I started in January of 2020, which is a very fun time to start managing an
Yeah.
AmeriCorps program.
Oh my gosh. What was that like? Holy child, what was that like for you? And it's a new program. So like, and you had funding, so you had to spend the money.
Yeah, yeah. So it was an incredible experience getting to build our program kind of from the ground up. So we were the actually, we started at the same time as Dallas, but Communities in Schools Heart of Texas, which is in Austin and the surrounding areas, has had AmeriCorps members for like maybe 20 years. So we started off kind of copying their model, and then we were able to adjust it to our needs. So we actually started with a focus on attendance and very quickly realized that we needed to amend that right away because
Yeah.
attendance was not going to be a viable performance measure for us. For those listening, each AmeriCorps grant has to have a performance measure that they work towards. And so we switched to students' well-being. So really measuring through our mental health and well-being survey, a pre-post survey with every student. So it just took so much adaptability, and that is one of our core values at Communities in Schools. But being able to just pivot so quickly from in-person services in the schools to supporting our community in other ways. A lot of it was organizing food drop-offs. There was a really big need for food support in San Antonio during COVID, especially those first few months. So we very quickly pivoted to supporting our students and their families with those needs.
Yeah, that when I was with the Maryland Commission at that time during the pandemic. I started in 2019. I was so excited. I was like, let's do this now. And so we, as a commission, we were like, oh, we got to help our sites get ready. We're going to help the tutors to do virtual, blah, blah, blah. And they were on it like that. Like they didn't need it. We needed more help than they needed help. The AmeriCorps members were being innovative. The programs were pivoting and they were finding the resources. So it sounds like your program, Communities in Schools, did the same. You probably mentioned this at the beginning, but I probably zoned out. It's kind of early here in Maryland. What are the ages that Communities in Schools serves?
I have not mentioned it yet. So
Oh,
as far as our agency, we are in pre-K through 12th grade.
oh,
So we're
wow.
in elementary, middle schools, and high schools. AmeriCorps is a smaller part of what we do. So we serve about 160 total campuses across Bexar County and actually 3 surrounding rural areas, including Uvalde, Texas. And then for AmeriCorps, we place in about 45 of those schools every year. And our AmeriCorps members as well, we're also open to varying age ranges. All of our candidates have a background in social services, whether it's social work, counseling, psychology, even sociology like me. We really seek out current university students as well as recent graduates or those who are transitioning careers.
I love that. Can you speak more to we'll just pivot right into your recruitment pitch. Like what is the opportunity for the individuals? You mentioned the age range. What else? What do they do? What's their day in a life of a Community in Schools AmeriCorps member?
Absolutely. So we really formed our program around the goal of creating a pipeline of
Mm,
social service professionals who are well prepared and well supported in starting their careers. Social services tends to have pretty high turnover rate. And so we really want to help ensure that we are supporting those who come from the backgrounds of the communities that we provide services
mm,
in to
yeah.
become professionals in this field. And that means that our program has a really great wraparound supports, in addition to, of course, the living stipend and the Siegel Education Award. So, what our AmeriCorps members do is they provide either case management or supportive guidance services to a small group of students on campus, typically about anywhere between like 8 to 12 students, really getting to build a one-on-one relationship with them. Relationships are the heart of what we do at Communities in Schools. It's what our founder, Bill Milliken, started us with. That's the core of who we are. And so they start building those relationships. And then from there, they work on targeted behavior needs. So let's say a student is struggling with self-esteem. They could provide one-on-one sessions to those students. They could do a group setting. Maybe it's an 8th grade girls group that's all focused around self-esteem, doing different engaging art activities, discussions throughout the semester. And they also provide school-wide support. So that's
Wow.
could be anything like a parent engagement parent and family engagement night. It could be a morning like attendance initiative where we're providing coffee and donuts to the families who are dropping off their students on time. Just all kinds of school-wide and community-wide supports. And finally, like with any role, there is data entry. So you get really good experience being able to enter every service you provide to the student into our database. And just some of the wider benefits are that we do provide extensive training for our members in those important behavior topics. And we also really only place 1 to 2, maybe 3 AmeriCorps members on a campus. So you
Okay.
truly get very intensive one-on-one or small group supervision from your supervisor on campus.
I love that. It sounds like it could be a really creative opportunity for somebody who's looking, there's definitely things that they need to do for the student, but if they like to do these collective, bigger group sort of coffee and donuts, which I would totally drop my kid off on time if I got coffee and donuts. I need some initiative like that for me to like get to work on time, which is actually right here. And so, but reflecting back on the service, the communities and schools AmeriCorps opportunity, it sounds like it's a great, like if somebody wants to really focus in on one area or 2 or 3 areas, it sounds like they have a little bit of leniency and creativity that depending on what their strengths are. Would you say that that's the case?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually a strengths-based agency. So everyone who comes to us does the Clifton Top 5 Strengths assessment. And we, part of what I love about just even working for communities and schools is that they say, like, here's the goal, figure out how you're going to get there,
Oh,
right?
I
And
love
so
that.
the
Yeah.
goal is providing, especially on our campuses, very targeted supports based on the needs of that community. So we actually have an entire needs assessment process
Mm.
that AmeriCorps members can be a part of with their supervisors that helps to identify what the needs are for that community, for those caseloads, and creatively getting to work together to get there. Collaboration is also one of our core values, and we do that in partnership with the students themselves, with the families, with the community, with the principal, with the school staff, with community partnerships, anyone we can bring into the schools, hence the name.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm as you were talking about all of these like just supportive services for the community and school staff and also for the schools that you serve in and the AmeriCorps members, I'm just picturing like a beautifully nurtured garden, where it just like it has enough fertilizer in it, it has enough water, it doesn't have too much water. Like somebody makes sure that like, no, we don't need to water today. It's been raining for 3 days, and there's shade bushes and there's big trees and there's little flowers because there's enough sun, but it just sounds like just a really beautifully manicured garden that's like naturally sustaining because everything's kind of pouring into and showing up in the best fashion that they can. This sounds like such a great opportunity. I hope that people are listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, I need that. And I love what you said too. And I'll just Volunteer Maryland also didn't have an age limit. I mean, it was 17 till, well, I would always say like able-bodied, really. Like you just needed to be able to do the service. And I love the idea of having somebody who might be thinking about doing a career shift, just taking a leap and jumping in and doing a year of service. Now, save your pennies before you do this. But so what's the recruitment look like? What's the process? And what's the window?
Yeah, so just a few things first. I love the flourishing garden analogy. I think part of what allows us to flourish is we are actually a trauma-informed agency. And this kind
Hmm.
of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, is we recognize that it's possible that our staff, our students, anyone we interact with in the community has the possibility of having experienced trauma in their lives. And so we really shape our policies, we shape our trainings, we shape our day-to-day services, the structure of our AmeriCorps program to help ensure that we are having that flourishing garden by being trauma aware. And
Hmm.
actually, we are trauma certified agency. I'm blanking on the exact phrase, but it's through a certifying agency here in San Antonio. So I
Wow.
think that's a really important part of who we are and what allows our garden to flourish. And also, I wanted to highlight one of those career changes we get a lot in San Antonio, being a military city USA, is
Oh
we have
yeah.
veterans who are going back to school. They're getting a degree in social work or in counseling, and they come and do the AmeriCorps program with us to help us get them started in that social service career.
That's
Um,
awesome. Oh my gosh, what a great opportunity for a service member who wants to do something different. Because they're already showing up with so much experience with whatever that is that they, went through for their service, for their military service, and then already coming in. And I love that idea. I hope that that's an initiative that you guys really double down on. And if there's any veteran organizations out there, get in touch with Sarah and get that pipeline of military veterans going into communities in schools AmeriCorps program. That's beautiful. So you already
absolutely.
mentioned that there's no limit on the age group or on the age of service. Is there anything else that we should know? Yeah. Oh, when is
Yeah, I'd love
yeah.
to. Yep. I'd love to just chat a little bit about the structure of our program, our recruiting. So, one of the neat things about us is we are actually not a full-time AmeriCorps program. We intentionally only have 300-hour, 450-hour, and 675-hour slots because we are targeting current university students in the social service field. And with that, we actually do recruiting through, well, we really kick off with AmeriCorps Week in March. And
Mm,
then we recruit through January because we offer
wow.
both semester and full year opportunities. So for the 24-25 school year, we have fall 24 opportunities, we have spring 25 opportunities, and then we also have those full year opportunities where you're really serving with us August or September through the end of May at the end of the school year.
So you have short term, but you also have the 1,200, 1,700 hours, or are they all short?
No, we are all the short-term slots. Yeah,
Gotcha.
but we do have many AmeriCorps members who enjoy the experience so much that they let's say they start with us as a junior in college and then they sign back up for
Hmm.
senior year of college, or for example, internship one versus internship two. We get a lot of
Gotcha.
those who return with us, so they end up serving more hours overall. But we've really intentionally structured it that way to align with all our amazing university partners. We have so many incredible programs in the San Antonio area who really look for these type of opportunities where their
Yeah.
students can gain experience while fulfilling their internship credits for their university.
That's so cool. It's like, oh, it's such a great idea of combining AmeriCorps service year and internship. I know there's probably hundreds of programs that do that around the country, and maybe we need a special series about that now. Every time I have a conversation with someone, I'm like, oh, let's have a series about that. So what you're saying is if an individual is interested in the program, they can do it during their semester and it can qualify as an internship. Plus, you get all the benefits of being an AmeriCorps member. Plus, you get all the benefits of being an AmeriCorps alum after you finish your service year. That's just
Exactly.
yeah, that is such a win, 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 win situation for everybody, the
Yeah.
community, the person, everything.
And then one more win is that it's actually a win for our agency, communities, and schools as well, because just like I did, right? I went into a site coordinator position, which is an entry level case management position after completing my service year. And we really offer that opportunity to our AmeriCorps members as well. So AmeriCorps members who successfully complete the program are guaranteed an interview for that position when it's open to them. So we have many now current site coordinators at communities and schools in San Antonio who started with us as AmeriCorps members. And we've really seen successes there too, because you mentioned that it's kind of like a year-long interview. Well, to us, in a way, it's almost a year long of training and
Hmm.
preparation and getting them ready to take on a full-time role, which is intensive. You know, we are in high-need school campuses, and
Yeah.
that that preparation allows them to feel prepared and not you know succumb to burnout or secondary trauma, right, that can
Yeah.
come in these social services roles. And
Yeah.
whether that's with us or with another agency, whatever direction they choose.
Wow, this is a great conversation for an early, dreary Sunday morning out here. We're recording on May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, and it's raining here. And this is just like a really bright conversation. So I really appreciate you showing up and being interested and joining the podcast. And this just sounds like such a great opportunity. And I think we mentioned, I forget if we talked about this before I hit record, but communities in schools not is a national organization. Not every communities in schools has an AmeriCorps program, but they might. So if you're not in San Antonio, I guess they can go to the Communities in Schools site and search. But where if they wanted to look for your specific opportunity, how easy is it to find the opportunity? And then also, what's the application process?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can find our application on our website, which is cissa.org. It's pretty clearly labeled AmeriCorps. A lot of times we'll have the website banner, so you can just click it easily, or you can go into the top toolbar and it'll say Get Involved, and then click on AmeriCorps. One thing that's interesting is Communities in Schools is a national organization, but we're an affiliate model. So everyone has their own separate websites, has their own separate organizations in each community that really responds to those needs. And that's why
Gotcha.
some of us have AmeriCorps grants and some of us don't, is because we are not a national direct model, right? We're not top down. We are very much organic based on the needs of each community, which is really neat. So I would say your best bet, instead of going to the Communities in Schools national website, would actually be to go to the AmeriCorps website for that state or national. We all have it posted. Or you can also just Google it, Communities in Schools Austin or Communities in Schools Dallas, and it should pop up for you.
That's so great. And I really do like the idea too, or I think the idea is important of not having a cookie cutter. I think we're really transitioning in the world to realize that like what goes on in San Antonio is a little bit different than what goes on in Baltimore, and what helps in San Antonio doesn't necessarily fit in Baltimore. I'm so happy we're opening our eyes to those things, and actually living into that. So this has been such a great, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to share briefly, since you asked about the application process. So it is an online application. It will ask for a resume. Cover letters and references are not required, but you can provide them if you want to. Our human resource department will screen it, and then they will just send the application on to me, and I will actually be the one reaching out to you, future candidate, to schedule an interview. And the interview process is really, I just like to say that it's just some questions, getting to know you, getting to know your professional goals. We'll do a couple of scenario questions around things you may encounter with students, but we really want it to be a collaborative interview process. We want to hear from you. So that's it.
And if a candidate gets kind of pushed along the line, there is a background check, I'm assuming, because every AmeriCorps program needs one. And you guys
of
are
course,
in classes,
so once the interview is processed, we'll notify you whether or not you've been tentatively accepted pre-background check, and then we'll walk you through the background check process, which is multiple steps. Being based in the schools, we have one for our agency as well as one for the school districts that we partner with.
Yeah, and hang in there. It's totally worth it. It's even if you're like, what? I have to do what and where and who? Just stick with it. It's going to be well worth it. Sarah, this has been such a great conversation. I love learning about the community in schools, the AmeriCorps program, and your service journey, and just connecting with AmeriCorps alums. Is there anything else that you want folks to know as we wrap up this conversation?
Just same as you, Nicki, right? AmeriCorps helped launch my career. It's really a great opportunity for you all to launch yours as well, whether that's with Communities in Schools or another agency. Keep looking until you find the fit that's right for you. And thank you again for your time, Nicki. It was a really great, like you said, bright conversation to start off a Sunday.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thank you all for listening to the AmeriCorps Connections podcast. And we'll be back with either another regular interview with an AmeriCorps alum, or we'll have a recruitment extravaganza. I have a lot of folks on the calendar, so and I never know what's coming out. Thank you so much for supporting the program or the podcast, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and then also like and leave comments or whatever on the podcast. So, all right, take care, everyone.